All right, welcome back. So today we're going to dive into something pretty huge. It's a fundamental shift in how we're thinking about the future of AGI. Seriously, this takes the whole conversation out of sci-fi movies and drops it right into the world of complex, real-world engineering. Let's get into it.
You see, for years, basically since the beginning, the entire field of AI safety has been built on one single, really powerful idea, an assumption, really. And this one premise, it's guided pretty much everything.
I mean, you know the trope, right? This single, giant, super intelligent mind, the one that just kind of wakes up one day, an all-powerful consciousness humming away in a server farm. So naturally, the big challenge was always framed as, okay, how do we make sure its values line up with our values? How do you control this one single artificial god? Okay, but what if that whole picture is just wrong? What if AGI isn't one mind at all? This is the question that's turning everything on its head. There's a new hypothesis out there, and it suggests the future we need to prepare for looks nothing like that. So to really get where we're going, we got to first understand where we've been. Let's break down this traditional view, the one that's dominated the conversation forever. Researchers call it the one AI assumption. So the key takeaway from this old model is that the safety problem was all about single agent value alignment. In plain English, the goal was to basically get inside this one superbrain and make sure it wanted the same things we want. But see, that whole idea, that entire framework, it all hinges on this one system popping up all by itself. All right, now for the plot twist. Let's look at the new idea on the block. It's called the patchwork hypothesis, and it says AGI isn't going to be this big, single lights-on moment. Instead, it'll be something that just emerges from a really complex system. So instead of picturing one giant brain, I want you to imagine something more like a bustling city or a huge economy made up of tons of different AI agents. Now, each one of these agents on its own isn't a full-blown AGI. They're specialists. You've got some that are brilliant at data analysis, others that just write code all day, some that handle communication. But, and this is the key part, when they all start coordinating and working together, the network itself becomes generally intelligent. And when you put them side by side like this, the shift is just crystal clear, right? We're not talking about a single mind anymore. We're talking about a whole distributed network. It's not about a single system waking up. It's about intelligence emerging from complexity. And the most crucial part for us, the safety goal completely changes. It's no longer about aligning one AI. It's about governing an entire system. Okay, so if AGI is more like an economy than a single entity, that raises a huge question. How in the world do you make that safe? Well, the answer is, you don't try to program it like a single piece of software. You have to govern it. The problem suddenly looks a lot less like coding and a lot more like economics and system design. There's actually a quote from the research that just nails this idea perfectly. It says, the problem is more akin to system governance than single agent value alignment. Think about that. We're shifting from trying to be a psychologist for one AI to being like a city planner or a market regulator for a whole society of AIs.
So how do you actually manage this AI economy? Well, researchers are proposing these things called virtual agentic sandboxes. Just think of it like building a super secure, super regulated stock market, but for AI agents. The whole point is to design it with rules that stop the kinds of messes we see in human economies. For instance, every single AI agent has to have a verified digital ID, so you can always trace it back to a real-world person or company, accountability. And they need a Sybil-resistant reputation. What's that? A Sybil attack is when one bad guy creates like 1 million fake accounts to make something look popular or trustworthy. Think of all those fake product reviews. This system is built to stop that cold, to make sure you can actually trust the reputation scores. It's all about building a solid, trustworthy market from the very beginning. Okay, so building this whole AI economy is going to need a totally new playbook, right? And this isn't just a bunch of ideas on a whiteboard. Researchers are actively developing the practical tools and strategies to actually implement this kind of governance. And a huge piece of that playbook is something called red teaming. It's basically hiring professional hackers to try and break your own system. To make sure all those fancy market rules actually hold up under pressure, you have teams of experts whose entire job is to find loopholes and vulnerabilities. They're trying to find the cracks in the foundation before the bad guys, or even just some weird, unexpected AI behavior, can exploit them. And look, you can't just cross your fingers and hope the system is safe. You have to actually prove it. And that's where something called a safety case comes in.
Think of it like a legal case. It's a structured, formal argument backed up with tons of evidence that you present to show, hey, this system is acceptably safe for what it's going to be doing.
And that case can basically go one of two ways. First, you can argue inability. That's where you prove the system literally cannot cause a specific type of harm. It just doesn't have the ability. The second way is the red-teamed approach. This is for when the system does have some dangerous capabilities. Here you have to show all the evidence from your stress tests that prove your safety nets and your market rules are tough enough to handle it and keep the risk super low.
Okay, so we've got the rules for the whole market, the big picture stuff. But what about the little guys, the individual AI agents running around in this economy? How do we make sure they're actually trying to do what we want them to do?
Well, that's the classic alignment problem, just on a smaller scale. And for really complex goals, you can't just program a simple rule like get the highest score, right? Because what we actually want is often fuzzy and hard to define. So to solve this, the answer is something called reward modeling. It's a clever way to teach an AI what we want without having to spell it out in code.
So how does it work? It's basically a constant feedback loop. Step 1, an agent does something. Step 2, a human, or maybe another AI, looks at 2 different outcomes and just picks the one they like better. That's it. Simple preference. Then, step 3, a different AI, called the reward model, is watching all of this. It's learning to predict what kinds of outcomes we humans will prefer. And finally, step 4, the original agent gets updated. Its new goal is to do things that the reward model thinks will give a thumbs up to. And this loop just goes on, with the agent getting better and better at understanding our real intentions, all from simple feedback. So when you step back and look at all the pieces we've talked about, this patchwork idea, the AI economy, the whole safety playbook, and teaching AIs with reward modeling, what you end up with is a completely different vision for what AI safety even is. What this all boils down to is that the new frontier of AI safety isn't really about trying to build one single, perfectly good AI god anymore. It's about being really, really smart architects. It's about designing the marketplace, setting up the rules, defining who's responsible for what, and even building in some systemic friction, speed bumps, to make sure the whole system is stable and predictable.
And that leaves us with this one final massive question that just reframes the whole challenge. This isn't just about stopping a bad thing from happening, it's about building a good thing. So the question is, are we just building a cage for a machine? Or are we laying the foundations for an entirely new kind of society? And honestly, that thought changes everything.